How's it going, brother?
It's going.
Thanks so much for coming down, man. I know you're a busy guy and it consumes your life. So right now you're a counselor at a treatment center in Toronto, a rehab center, right? What's that like?
Well, I'm actually the clinical supervisor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a clinical supervisor
thanks,
of the facility. So, what's that like? I mean, it can be chaotic at times. It's definitely an environment where, it's great because, organically, you see the transition and people that come in, so broken, hopeless, don't really know where to start, where to begin, and just come in there and to be able to sort of be a part of that whole process for an individual. There's nothing like it, right? To see somebody get to a place of feeling well, to start building their self-esteem back up, feeling like they have some sense of purpose in their life, feeling like, this comes back, because drugs and alcohol rip this out, right? No matter what, right? So that, that process is really, really amazing to see. So, I get to see that on a daily basis. Obviously I manage the clinical team and the nursing team and the sales team. So I have my hand in a lot of different, avenues, but I'm grateful, for that opportunity, because 7 years ago, I remember saying that I wish for this, right? And when I think about, how hard days are and how I look at responsibility today as a privilege, not a burden, and think back like, I really wish for this 7 years ago.
Yeah. And I didn't have a responsible bone in my body back in addiction and alcoholism, right? There was no such thing as responsibility. I didn't show up for anybody, You know what's funny is I just assumed your job title. I do that a lot with people where I'm like, you're this, because I don't know, I just had this, nobody even told me that, right? I just had this preconceived notion. But instead of me telling your story and telling you who you are, why don't you kick us off with, I mean, that was beautiful what you said. I love hearing that side, because there's a lot of darkness in addiction too, right? So it's nice that you get to be a part of the beautiful side of it too, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself, what it was like, what happened, what you're like now.
Yeah, absolutely. The old story. Yeah. So I struggled for a lot of years. I talk about this often more than not. Drugs and alcohol were exposed to me at a very, very early age, and family dynamic was a big piece. And I grew up in Toronto, and over the course of my young life, I saw a lot of things that no kid should really see growing up, and that dynamic of chaos. That's really the word I can see, because if you looked at things from the outside, I was born in a very, very privileged home. Pragmatically, all my needs were taken care of. I was fortunate that my mom and dad were very well off as I got older, and so I had everything that I needed. But addiction runs in my family, and my brother was off to the races at a very early age. So I think social crowds played a big part, and I really wanted to sort of emulate that for some reason growing up. My mom and dad weren't around too much. They were traveling or working. My dad was never really around. He was gone 3 weeks out of the month and come back for a week and go. And I didn't really have that strong of a relationship with him. He was more close with my brother, who would go with him and travel, and my dad tried to help him for so many years, right? So but on paper everything was good. Everything checked out, right? Checking the boxes. So and at that time, I don't think, even though I had these like thoughts of like never feeling good enough and not really feeling like I was adequate, maybe because I wasn't really focused on too much. It was a lot of the situations, or a lot of the focus was on, my brother and his addiction, right? And boy, did I use that excuse when people asked me why I wanted to use, right? I used every excuse in the book. But anyways, things, growing up were chaotic at times, right? So, I got through elementary school, was very social. I started to really feel confident in that component anyways, and then I went to high school, and I was one of those kids that I couldn't get into the high school that I wanted to because my grades weren't as good. So I was one of those kids that was, I guess you could say, fortunate or unfortunately. I went to grade 9. So when I went to grade 9, they just started the high school, so it was the first year of the actual high school, so there wasn't too many people there, and that was kind of a weird experience for me. I don't know, I didn't really like the people that I was with, so that was a really tough year for me socially. But then I ended up going to a new school in grade 10, and I remember going there and kind of feeling like an outcast because everybody kind of knew each other already. Like, nobody goes to high school in grade 10, everyone comes from either grade 9 or they come up from the elementary side of things, right? So it was kind of, I didn't really fit in too well until I was in grade 12, and that's when alcohol started to play a little bit of a factor because I wanted to, fit in with some of the social crowd and the crew. And it wasn't until, so I did well in high school, but it wasn't until university where, I was able to sort of be on my own, right? Because, my parents, even though they weren't around, they were very involved in how I was doing in school, they from afar, right? I didn't see them a lot physically, but, financially they were there, and, they would always call and ask like how things are going. So, there was a little bit of like a micromanaging component there, right? So when I went to university, I was all alone, and I was with some of my buddies, and that's when, things started to really come into motion, right? It was alcohol for a while, then, sort of became cocaine. I was doing it recreationally every maybe couple months here and there, just kind of enjoying my time, right? And I remember when I first hit that cocaine line, I thought, I want to feel like this for the rest of my life.
Same.
I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. And everything that I, had a distorted sort of thought or like lack of confidence, it all just went away. The anxiety went away. The feeling, the inadequacy went away, and I felt like I was like myself, right? And I thought to myself at that time, I don't understand why people have a problem with this. This is great. This is the best thing, because I always associated hardcore drugs with like, what you see people in the streets and just where it takes you, right? The guy under the bridge, right? And, so when I did that, I was like, wow, like this is amazing, right? So, my first couple years of university, I did extremely well, very good grades. And then I was introduced to the party scene and learning how to, plan events and be a promoter, right? I started a bunch of parties there with a couple guys, and, we started booking DJs and getting people into really making the town like a good atmosphere, because that's what we wanted to do, right? And that's when I really started to enthrall myself in the scene of things, right? So, I always tell people like, what my sense or realm of normalcy is could be different from you, but at some point we start to adapt to that normalcy. So if I'm put in a situation where things are really, really uncomfortable, but I don't have an option, or I don't think I have an option at that time to make a change, I'm going to adapt, and it's going to become a normal thing. So going out and partying and hosting events and making everybody feel like they're having an amazing time was normal for me.
Yeah, your baseline.
Right? My baseline, right? And that was what was important to me, right? That's where my values lined up with at that time, because I wanted people to recognize and know who I am and know who I could be, and everything that I thought that I wanted to be, and, so that really, really took off for me. And, I finished school. I got a girlfriend out there. So even though when I was done and I went back to Toronto and went back to my parents' house, that reality, I just wanted to keep that lifestyle, so I would go back and forth all the time. And, and I really started to do the same thing that I was doing out there in the Toronto scene, and got connected with me and my best friend. We started a promoting business, and we started hosting events and working with, other guys in the industry. And that really became my sense of normalcy. So, it was basically like, I love to party. I'm good at it. And here's some money to do it.
Wow.
And here's some drugs that are all around you all the time. At that point or that age, it's like I'm living the life here, or so I thought. And so, I did that for a bunch of years, and you can see over that time the progression my drug and alcohol use became really, really bad, especially the cocaine. But again, adaptation, normalcy, that was normal for me because I was surrounded by people that were doing it too. And that became my normal, right? So when you enter this like this world or like this vision and you're like so enthralled with it, it's like everything seems to be okay, right? If you're in a abusive relationship with somebody and you stick around for so long, your brain starts to adapt to it, and then you think that this is normal.
You don't know anything.
You don't know anything else, right? So going back to that, so I started doing the club scene and partying and got big, and with that, and did that for a while, and my drug use started to become really, really bad. And when I was 25 years old, kind of on the cusp of that whole scene, my brother died of an overdose, and my dad found him at the house. And my dad was I felt the poor man, like he was worked so hard in his life to become who he became, a very successful person, immigrated from Russia, didn't have he had $12 in his pocket when he came, and he became so successful at his work, and he just wanted to do anything he could to help him, and it was a losing battle for him, unfortunately, and that was a tough pill to swallow. And so I know at this point, I still like what I'm doing, but I know it's seeing that, not that it shook me, because he was into other things, other substances, but I never thought I was going to take myself there, right? And so I remember at his funeral, my mom going to me like, hey, like, I really hope you don't go down that same path. And I looked her straight in the face, and I said, I already know I'm down that path, but I won't, And it was a bull-faced lie, But still, in my mind, I'm justifying that I'm okay. So anyway, I, go to my first stint of treatment when I'm 27, because I start to realize I got a problem here, and, things in my life start becoming unmanageable. And it was the slow burn, right? And I go to treatment, and like not wasted my time, but just I wasn't ready, and I wasn't ready. And what do? I come out of treatment, and I'm throwing a boat cruise that night with a bunch of friends. We got I can't remember who the DJ was, but we had some DJ from Europe coming to do this party, and I miss the whole planning of it because I'm in rehab. So I come out 2 days later. I'm back to doing what I'm doing right away, right? Instantaneous, because you see, I associated knowledge and theoretical concepts with what recovery is. If I can just understand what they're saying to me and delivering that message, I'm good. I can figure it out. I can use successfully, right? The tale and the story that we tell ourselves over and over, right? And boy, was I wrong. But, anyway, in that mindset, that's where I was. So, yeah, I struggled for a couple of years, and, I meet a girl, I should say, when I was 25, and we start, dating, and, I sell her this like real good perspective on who I am, like
version of you,
version of me.
Yeah.
Do you know who I think I am, right? And I'm really, really selling it, because I can sell. I'm a good talker. I'm a good. I can show people things are always good, right? Crack a smile on my face, deflect with humor, all of the masks and all of the facets that we sort of uncover and carry through, right? So I meet her. We start dating. We're together for a couple of years, and throughout that time, she really, really voices a concern about my drug use, because I'm out all night partying and not coming back till the next day, or being with her, leaving my room and going across the street at like 5 a.m. and continuing on. So she raises concern, and she's like I can't be with somebody like this, and again, like in my most vulnerable state, I guess, when you're coming down, you're selling yourself. You're selling yourself on the version of who you're going to be. And please, I promise I'm not going to do it again. And all of those things. Right. So, when I look back on this now, I think to myself, that's powerlessness right there. Right. Because even though every single fiber of my intention is believing what I'm saying, my actions can't back it up.
No.
Right. We're judged by our actions, not our intentions. So, here I am trying to sell her on this idea and this version of who I am. So she gets pregnant, and I tell myself that time, like, that's it. Like, this is a sign from God, and this is why I was meant to be clean and sober. But again, I don't really understand or conceptually and execute, like action wise, understand what it is that what I have to do here, right? I think I can just moderate, or I think I can just go to rehab again, and I can figure out a way to just balance this and drink and use like a normal person, right?
Like, this is kind of like shortcut almost.
This is a shortcut.
Ease yourself away.
I love the shortcuts.
Yeah, me too.
I love the shortcuts.
I'm a shortcut guy.
Whatever it is, just I'll do anything but what you're presenting to me, right? Yeah. So anyway, I go to treatment a couple more times, and I come back, and she gives birth and to our daughter. She was born on July 30th, 2013, right? I'm 27 at the time, and I think I mentioned this when I spoke last week. It was like, she's born, and the first thing that I go do after she's born is I hold her, and I tell my daughter's mom that I'm gonna go to sleep because I'm tired, and I go pick up right away. And that's my first day of being a father. That's what that was using in a condo by myself. Supposed to be the fucking best day of my life, and being there for somebody, but self-centeredness, selfishness, instant gratification, entitlement. It's all about me, right? And so she's born, and I'm going through the battles, and we're fighting a lot, and it doesn't end up working out. So I go to treatment a couple of years later, and she breaks up with me, and I again, just not willing or ready to stop, because I'm so used to this crutch that I thought that I always needed, because as bad as the consequences were becoming, I was comfortable in that chaos. I was comfortable in the familiarity of the wreckage, and I'm not comfortable in the unfamiliarity, even though people are like, hey, like, come to this side of things.
It's way better.
It's way better, like, you got a good life ahead of you. You just don't know it yet. Yeah. I see what you're saying, but I'm just going to stay over here in this corner, right? And keep suffering, right? And, so, I ended up, getting addicted to opiates, because the cocaine was putting me into some crazy levels of psychosis and, all of those things. So I, one day I do some Percocets. I don't know if I can talk about substances. Yeah. So Percocets, and Percocets turn into oxys, and then turn into other things, and before you know it, a couple of years down the road, and here I am, using opiates every day, and I'm waking up and can't function normal without them. And man, what a powerless feeling that is, where it's like I have to maintain. It's not even getting high anymore. Yeah. It's maintaining.
It's just living.
It's just
breathing.
It's existing.
Yeah, existing.
It's existing, not living. Yeah. Right. And so my parents, and she obviously raises concerns. She tells them, and my parents find out, and I'm going back and forth, and recovery, not recovery, going to meetings, not going to meetings, going to rehab. Doing really. I always did well, because again, I knew what was expected of me, and anything that I did, I was very compliant, right? And not surrendering. There's a big difference between compliance and surrender, right? And I call it, what I call it? I call it conditional surrender. I will do this if I see this happening, right? Yeah. Conditional surrender. Yeah. It's not surrender.
So it's like surrendering on my terms.
It's surrendering on my terms and my will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so here's the plan. So I'm going to do these things, and this is what I'm going to get out of it, right? And it's a recipe for disasters, because they always say it in the fellowship, like, having expectations is like premeditated resentment.
Yeah, I love
that. Right. So again, this is what I'm doing, and finally I everybody's had enough of me. And I go out to Vancouver Island and go treatment there. I think it's like my fourth or fifth time in treatment, and I'm there for I think 5 months, 6 months. And they tell me, hey, like you shouldn't go back to Toronto. You should live out here for a while, get some foundation under your belt. But I'm like, yeah, like I guess, but I'm fighting it. And, my mom and dad, my dad's like, you have to stay out there. You have no choice. So I say, okay, like I guess, I'm going to stay out there. But I think that was really the first time that I really, really, really tried and did everything that was asked of me in a way, even though I felt uncomfortable doing it and I didn't want to do it, because I really was like, I feel like this is just not going to go down the right path. And, the last thing I want to do is, have my parents have no kids. Right. And, it's sad. Right. But, so I go, I do well, I start working out there and I'm living out there, and I take a year. Amazing. Take a year, right? And I thought that my program was okay, but again, compartmentalization, right? It's like I was like, picture you driving a car, brand new car, shiny, it's beautiful, it's got everything, all the bells and whistles, and there's a crack in your windshield, and someone's saying to you, hey, there's a crack in your windshield. Yeah, look at my nice big ass car, black, exterior rims, everything. Yeah, but you got a crack in your windshield. Yeah, I just filled up the car with gas. It's got 24-inch rims on the tires. It's got a surround sound system. Yeah, but your windshield's cracked, right? So that compartmentalization. So I'm doing everything that I need to be doing, except I get into a relationship. I get into a relationship with somebody that I was warned and told not to, because we're too new, too fragile, and we have this, connection. So I do it, and some things happen with that, and I relapse. I relapse because the pain of losing the connection with this person that I think is like everything to me at the time, because again, I'm extreme black and white thinking. I don't have it anymore, and my first sort of solution is to go pick up. So where's my recovery? Where's my foundation at? I think that it's great, but it's not, because there's cracks in it, right? That compartmentalization on that decision leads to that. Yeah. So obviously my foundation wasn't good, right? So I relapse, I go back in for a couple of weeks, and I get the girl back, and again, please don't do it, but I gotta listen, I gotta learn the hard way. So, anyways, it ended up becoming a mess, and I relapse again, and then I'm out and about for about 4 months on the streets.
In Vancouver.
On Vancouver Island, on the streets, okay? Nowhere to live. My parents are done with me. Living with drug dealers. Just not where I envisioned my life to be. If you saw me my early years and in high school, and even the first couple years of university, but that's what ended up happening to me. And I had a recovery coach out there that God bless him, saved my life. And after about four months of doing this addiction thing, I was like, I was 150 pounds, scabs all over my body. I look brutal. And this guy pulls me out and says, you're going to Vancouver, and you're going to go to this treatment center because it's different from all the other ones. And it's not like the ones that you've been to. And, my willingness at the time was, I just wanted to die.
So broken.
So I get there, I'm doing the 10-day intro, and I don't know, man, I got there, and I just, as soon as I walked into that door, I'm like, something's got to change here. When it's like, okay, like, people have been leading the horse to water, but I can't drink it. Now it's time to drink it, and I get there, and I don't know what it was, man. It was the energy and the culture and the people that really, really saved me. And I was willing. So I complete there, and they say, you know, at one point I thought, okay, I'm going to do the 10 days and go back to Toronto, but they're like, no chance you're doing that. Like, you need to do this program fully, right? So I go do it. It takes me 3 months. It's a long-term program. And in those 3 months, though, you start going back to the fellowship, and you start going to, meetings, and you really build connections with people, and you really, understand the essence of what it means to help somebody, help somebody through their journey, even when you're in the state of shatteredness and despair and vulnerability. It's like, yeah, I don't care. Go help somebody else. Go help somebody else. Go help somebody else. Go help somebody else. Right. And that's what I did. And I complete there, and, they tell me, well, where's your willingness at? I said, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Like, okay, well, you're going to stay around here, and you're going to start volunteering your time here, because I think that you got a good story and a good message, and you've been through it. So if you volunteer and you like it, maybe there's a job here opening for you. And, the first thought I thought, yeah, I'm willing, but again, conditional surrender. I'm not making, $14 an hour to do this, like, and try to counsel people. It's got nothing to do with me. I want to go back to, what I was doing, right? And where's your recovery at? Where's your willingness at? What did that stuff ever do for you, right? It just got you back to the same places over and over again. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And, slowly over time, I ended up getting a job, and I started working with youth. Initially, that was my first real shot at this field. And, in that time, man, if I wasn't working, I was going to meetings every day. They said, get a service position. I got a service position. They said, get a home group. I got a home group. They said, get a sponsor that will take you through it. And that's what I did. And then when I got onto my step 9, I started sponsoring other guys. And that's all I really did for the first couple of years, was work and do recovery, because that's all I knew in that moment, and that's all I needed to do, because that's what somebody told me, right? So I started really building the trust and the essence of purpose, and just seeing other people and their story and where they came from and how well they did, and started going to medallions and all these things, 20 years, 25 years, for. I remember my third or fourth meeting, I'm hurting really, really bad. I'm on ORTs, and I'm there, and this guy who ends up becoming one of my mentors, and the guy that runs or started the treatment center that I was at. Yeah. Takes 40 years. Wow. And I'm thinking to myself, 40 years, I can't even get 40 minutes. Yeah. So, I'm there and I'm listening, and, I come up to him after and I say, like, how did you do this? Like, this is crazy. I can't believe that this you're 40 years sober. He says to me, well, it's simple. He's like, I live by 2 principles. Don't make decisions based on bad feelings, and don't do things you can't talk about. Mm-hmm. You do those 2 things, you're going to be okay. And it's in that moment, or in that sort of sequence, it seemed very, very, simple. Obviously, as I, continue the recovery, sometimes that's a difficult thing to do, right? But I did the best I could to execute that. And I started working there, and, all of this throughout this time, I look back on it, and I'm in Vancouver and Vancouver Island for about 6 years, and I'm going back and forth and trying to be a dad for my daughter the best way I could. And even though it was so difficult, not to be around her or to be with her, this was like my sacrifice that I needed to do, because I'd rather be someone that's there for her later in her life than never be there at all, And, Jill's institution's death, right? And it was hard. So, I started working there. I became a counselor there, and I actually, funny enough, started running the co-parenting group there for guys that wanted to rebuild their relationships with their kids and their spouses. And, I over my time there, it was like, I saw a lot of families and a lot of people reconnect with their kids, and I was so happy for them, because I learned how to be happy for somebody else rather than think about myself in the moment. And I learned that from there. And, it helped me really be a good dad and a good person, and a present person for when I came back here. So, I got clean and sober. I, worked in, like I said, for about 6 years, and I went to meetings and everything like that. And, I eventually ended up coming back here in May 2023 and, connected with Eric, and he said, hey, I got a job at my treatment center. Do you want to be a part of it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I remember we spoke preliminary before, and I kept saying, I'm moving back, because even though I felt really comfortable there, again, like I do really well in being in comfortability, right? Like I used to always say to myself, like, I'll dazzle you with my mediocrity because I'm okay, just like, having my head above the water a little bit. That's it. Yeah. That's all I really need, right? So I'm comfortable with that, right? So, that opportunity and that job in that field, like it opened up so much for me. But I could have stayed there for longer and been comfortable and all of that. But I knew, like in my heart, after making an amends to not actually a physical amends to my daughter, but writing a letter and doing all those things, that I needed to be there for her. And I made the move. I was in a 3-year relationship with somebody. She was supposed to come and move back with me, but she never ended up doing that because it was just too difficult for her, and I understand. But, I knew that that's what I had to do and where I had to be. So I made the move back in May 2023, and, the rest is really history. The rest is really history, right? And, along the ways, I was able to really, meet so many great people, so many good, wholesome people that were broken, and they were really good people. And, some of them did really, really well and got their lives back, and a lot of them didn't. And, it's really hard to see, and it's difficult to see. And, I think the thing, a lot of times the thing that sometimes we miss within our, actions is, the impact that it has on our family. Yeah. And, so when somebody starts doing well and getting their life back, the family gets well and gets their life back too, and it's this like overall, like organic, like change and I guess you can call it transformation. Yeah,
it's almost like a ripple effect, right?
It's like, a ripple effect, yeah.
Your recovery kind of just starts to affect everybody, but not at first, in my experience. It takes time.
It takes time.
You heal faster than they do. They have their own healing to do.
I remember, like, I was at somebody's 2-year medallion, and, the dad gets up and he goes, hey, I trust you now. Mm. Wow. 2 years. Wow. Trust you coming in my house and watering the plants. Yeah. I trust you coming inside my house and having the keys to it, right? It's a big deal.
It is.
It's a big deal, right? We don't think or look at those things in retrospect, because in retrospect it's just like, oh, it's my family. They should trust me. They should give me the keys. They should.
I'm doing better.
I'm doing better now, right? Yeah. And even when you're like in that grips and that cycle of addiction, like, you think things are owed to you, right? Yeah. Well, at least I did, right? And that was my perception, right? And it wasn't until everybody in my life was gone where I couldn't blame anybody else besides me, right? So when I say, like, 7 years ago, I remember I wished for this, I did, and I do. And man, my life today is it's hectic, but it's great. And, I definitely do a lot of things for myself that I need to do in order to keep that maintaining and maintenance. But, if I sat here and I told you, that my recovery has been linear throughout my 7 years, and that I've been, like, tapped in, I'm a liar. I'd be lying to you. I've struggled over the years, and today my solution obviously is not drugs and alcohol, but my first real, like, response to things is not drugs and alcohol, and the obsession is gone. But there's always other things that can creep up, whatever that is, right? And for me, I'm an all or nothing guy, real hardcore type 3. Shit, if there was a type 4, That would be me, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I got to watch myself with other things, you know, like, because I have struggled, you know, with gambling, and I've struggled with, you know, shopping and spending too much money. And, you know, again, like the perception of like, I need to look good and be this person that people can respect me, right? Like that thinking can sometimes come back, right? And depending on where I'm at spiritually and where my condition is at, some days I look at that and weigh on that more heavy than other, right? And I know that when that starts to become more heavy and a sort of a more dominant perspective in my life, that's when I know, okay, I got to tap back in. I'm not in trouble yet, but I will be, you know. And, you know, the biggest thing I think I've learned over my time is, you know, if it's not a big deal, I don't want it to become a big deal, right? Because I don't want a little thing to become a bigger thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it always starts as a little thing, right?
Always starts as a little
It's
thing.
always not a big deal. And then I like that a lot. Man, I resonated with a lot of that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, the first line thing, I hadn't thought about that in a while, you know, that first line. Because you come in, and depending on, you know, who you hang out with, what fellowship you go to, you hear a lot of people like talk about that first drink and they fell in love. That wasn't my experience with alcohol, right? You know, alcohol was always there. It's a problem. I don't drink today. I can't drink today. I can drink, but I choose not to. But I can't just have one. But that was never my experience. I had the experience with the stimulants where it was like, okay, and you said it allowed you to be you, right? And that was my false perception too. It was like this first line, oh, I'm finally this guy I want to be. People are laughing at my jokes. I'm the center of attention. You know, I can talk to girls. And you said too, I loved it, is like all these thoughts and any anxieties and worries and tomorrow, it just disappeared right away. I can relate to that too. It was a good solution for a while, for a bit, right? Until it wasn't. How did you know you were ready to come back to Toronto? I'm wondering that. Like, how did you know?
People.
Yeah.
People that knew me for a while. People that had strong recovery.
Yeah.
Those people
you could count on, and they weren't yes men or yes women.
Yeah, of course. Because here's the thing, man, like, you know, in the beginning of this last run around with recovery, like, my faith wasn't there. And I really truly had to learn that God works through other people. Yeah. And that was like my higher power, a collective group of people that have no subjective or emotional sort of, you know, hindsight thinking in my decisions, right? I needed that, right? So that was what it was, right? It was learning to trust what other people thought and how other people, you know, perceive things, right? And I obviously, you know, I did some writing around it, and, you know, I would, you know, I was really big into writing and doing some written work to really discover what the solution was, right? Like journaling and, you know, just doing like 1, 2, 3 exercises in your head, step 1, step 2. Like I had to actually visually put it on paper because I could see, and also too, it was a healthy way of processing how I'm feeling, you know, and being able to put it out on paper. But, you know, other people really, you know, because I was scared. I was scared because I was never able to, you know, collectively put any sobriety time in Toronto. And, you know, everybody, you know, I'm gone for 6 years, and, you know, everybody that I know back then is either, you know, has families or doing other things or not around anymore. You know, so when I came back, I really, like, I had a lot of fear. You know, how was I gonna, like, who was I gonna hang out with? Because I built such a strong community of people out there, you know, that were all in recovery. Like every single person I knew there was in recovery. So when I came back here, like, I got, like, you know, four friends of mine that I grew up with since I was a kid, you know, that are not in recovery. You know, some of them still, you know, smoke weed here and there, but you know, most of them, they're successful guys, right? And you know, it was hard. It's hard to, like, you know, sometimes, you know, and even when I'm with them, it's like, you know, I always go back sometimes to, like, the what if, you know, what if I just would have kept my head straight and where I would have been. But I'll tell you, Anthony, like, you know, I'm so grateful that I am an addict to a certain degree, if that makes any sense.
Of course.
Because, you know, the journey and being able to, you know, appreciate the journey along the way. When I think about, You know, when I was telling that story about going into treatment and volunteering, like in the moment, I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I
What's
doing?
the point?
But I look back and I'm like, I'm so appreciative that I just was willing to listen, right? So I took that rationale with me everywhere I went. So when it was time to go back and be a father in close proximity and be a son, you know, to my mom and dad who were getting old, and, you know, just being around for them more, you know, that's when I knew I was ready. When you're not wanting to leave, that's when you know you're ready, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So,
I got emotional when you were talking about going into that last treatment center, because I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't had somebody kind of explain it. I had that exact same experience this last time, my third treatment center, where I was so broken too. And I had the tools, you know, because I had put together some time. I knew what I had to do. But I always say this, getting back into recovery is the hardest thing for me. Yeah. Staying out here is so much easier than getting back in for me, for this addict and alcoholic. That's not everybody's story, but it was so hard, man, to get back in here. And when I went to that last treatment center, you know, I always say this, there's a guy, Dave W., you know, 20 years of sobriety. And all I remember about my intake was he just looked at me and he said, "Son, welcome back to recovery." You know, and I just started crying. I was like, fuck, I made the right decision. Thank God. Like, finally, you know, it was, luckily only 5 or 6. It was like probably a year of on and off, right? A year of suffering, right? Because when you're in and out, it's almost worse than just being out sometimes, because you know how good it could be. I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing that happens. And so, you know, you brought me back to that moment where I just walked in and I was like, fuck. I looked at my wife dropped me off. I looked at her and I felt so bad. Like, I couldn't even feel anything in the moment. But, you know, those first couple of days when you start to get your feelings back, I don't know if you remember this now, because it's been a while, but I remember it's pretty fresh for me. There was, like, I'd say probably 2 weeks in, you know, your brain starts to clear up and you see it, right? So you see it in the clients. All these emotions start to come back, and all the shit you put people through comes back 10 times stronger. You know, and I just felt so bad. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I put my mom, my dad, my wife, my sister, I put them through it again. And I can't believe I did this to myself again.
Almost like you're on autopilot and you don't really see what you're doing. You're just kind of doing it, you know, and then you're right, like, feelings start to come back. And it's like, I don't want to feel this right now. I don't want to experience this right now. This sucks. Yeah. You know, I'm doing everything I can to run away from it. You know, because that's what I'm good at. Yeah. You know, so when you're right, when it starts to come back, it's like, you know, but that's also dangerous, and that's dangerous because we want to try to fix everything. Yeah. I want to try to fix everything as quick as possible. Absolutely. I got to get back to work. I got to make up for lost time. I got to be a good dad. You know, but how? I don't know how to do any of these things. I've been stuck, too busy using, for the last 15 years, right? But my thinking is so skewed that, you know, I'm trying to, you know, I call it, you know, jumping off kilter, you know, so something like that, where it's like I gotta remove and abstain from the guilt, so I need to do these other things, right? But in that process, I'm only making things worse because I'm not learning about, you know, tolerance or patience or trusting the process or appreciating the journey or, you know, hearing anybody else. I'm listening to react and respond rather than to understand, right? And, you know, I always say, feelings won't kill you, drugs and alcohol will. Yeah. Right?
I love that.
You know, so I hear you, right? So, you know, that experience for you too, like, you know, multiple treatment centers, and, you know, you have all of these good things in your life, but it's like, why is it not enough? Right? And you can take every good thing in my life and put it in front of me, and you can show me, like, you know, I'm going to lose all of these things, but if I'm not good internally, no matter how much I love those people, it's not enough. And I feel like that's something that people have a hard time understanding, because logically, the people that love you and care about you, it makes sense. But, you know, emotionally, internally, it's like, it's not enough, right? So, that's where you really got to do the work on yourself on a consistent basis to get there, and then when you appreciate the journey and you're in that process, you start to understand.
Yeah, the ups and the downs, right? You're kind of appreciating the downs as being a lesson. This doesn't make sense to me right now, but one day it will. One day this will make sense. You mentioned cross addictions, which I'm, I think for me right now, the phone is probably the big one, right?
Me
the
too.
Computer, the phone.
Yeah.
And I gambling is a tough one for people. Are you seeing a lot of people come in with gambling problems yet? Because I know they just recently legalized it in Ontario not too long ago, about a year. Are you starting? I feel like a lot of people come into rehab maybe for something else, and then you have to kind of do the work that, there's this porn addiction here. There's this gambling thing, right?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, if people are coming in with gambling addictions, they're not really disclosing it, right? Because again, here's something that's provided or presented as a normal thing to do now. You're watching a sports.
It's on TV.
It's on TV, and it's become part of the game.
Yeah.
It's become part of the experience, I guess you would like to call it, right? You don't just look at a sporting event or, and say, this is just a game. It's an experience, right? And betting and gambling has become a big piece of it, right? So, to answer your question, I don't see it off that too much. I mean, we've had some cases, but I feel like, as we continue to go, it's coming. It's coming. And it's probably the scariest addiction, I think, because money is the drug and it's not about winning or losing. So the same sort of feelings that you try to chase with drugs and alcohol, you're chasing with gambling and chasing with losing money or winning money, right? It's that, why am I escaping by doing this? But, you lose all your money, then what, So it's very scary, and I'm sure, as we continue to move along, you're going to start to see it becoming more and more prevalent.
I agree with you. And I think, I know this has hit personally to me too, but I think like the rates of suicide, especially with men that have gambling addictions, are starting to go up. I read that somewhere.
It's the highest suicide rate and addiction.
So it is true then.
Yeah. So when you actually gamble, you're the same dopamine levels as cocaine. It releases the same dopamine levels in your head, right? So that's the two are associated with each other. And yeah, it's scary. It's scary. And even like casinos, people just are so much. It's so readily available,
accessible,
and accessible, right? And you know what they say, like accessibility can be, the devil's playground for a person, right? Because it's right there in front of you, right? So, people are these days, everybody's on the phone and people are playing online slots and blackjack, and it's becoming like, I guess you could call it like a pandemic almost, like not a pandemic, but what's the word? Epidemic.
Yeah.
Epidemic.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your kind of, your mental health and how important it is to kind of do your own thing, because you're really busy with work. And I find that, I can get lost in helping other people. I was mentoring for a bit, and I've mentored a lot of guys. Luckily, one of the best parts of this whole thing, by far, like bar none. It's changed my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait to get back into it. What do your daily habits look like to kind of take care of your own recovery?
So I pray in the morning. Sometimes I'll meditate, but I pray in the morning.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
I read the Just for Today every day.
Nice, yeah.
Because again, I never know whenever it is I read something, when it's gonna hit, and kind of set me straight, right? Because again, I need to be reminded of certain things. When I'm in extreme thinking, when I'm in, there's days where I wake up and I don't want to adult. I want.
That's so true.
I want to be.
Man.
I want to be like a little kid, and I look at responsibility sometimes as a burden rather than a privilege, right? So, reading the Just for Today, which is something that was true and near and dear to me in my early recovery. I do that, and then I get to work, and I would like to say that, I go to a lot of meetings, but I don't. And, that's something that I definitely need to continue to work on. But I have a sponsor. I'm going through the book again, and I got a couple people reaching out that I'm going to take through the book too. And,
Nice.
When stuff sort of slows down for me. But, for me, man, like physical exercise is so important.
Yeah.
Playing sports is so important. Tennis or baseball. I play in a baseball league too, and I should mention that recovery softball was such a big and instrumental piece to my recovery when I was out there too. Like it really was good at helping me bond and form relationships with other people and meet other people, right? And so it was so cool to do that. That was like a really, really great time for me, right? So just those things and reminding myself that I need to have balance in my life and understanding that as long as I know I do my best every day, it's enough. Not much more I can do. So that, and even working in this field, people always say, okay, well, I work in this field, that's no way. Working in an environment like that has a mental toll.
Sure. Yeah.
Big time. And you got to have maintenance for yourself.
Yeah.
You really do. So that's kind of what it
Yeah,
looks
I
like
mean,
for me.
like even if you just look at the stats and the numbers, right? Like the stats and numbers do not favor us, right? So you put that in the treatment center environment. How many clients do you get? Thousands, right? In a month, I'm sure, or in a couple of months.
Yeah.
It's a big treatment center.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see more people, unfortunately, fail than succeed, right? And I don't like the word fail because relapse is not failure. I've learned that. Failure is the wrong word, but relapse and kind of stumble a bit, right? Why do you think people relapse? Like today, I know that's kind of a multifaceted answer, right? There's a lot of reasons, but just like today, why do you think? What are you seeing?
I think time. I think, people want to really get it in such a quick time and they sort of let go of the gas. I think people, how willing are they, right? And I don't know, like for me, man, and from the people that I've, gone and clean and sober with, I still talk to some of the people that I went through treatment with, and we were willing to do whatever it took, right? And I think sometimes people just have a lack of willingness, and I don't mean to say that in like a rude or disrespectful way. I'm just it's what it is. But I think time. I think people look at how quickly or in a short period of time I want to get everything back, right? And I think that they sort of just they fall off because of that. They don't take it as seriously, or they're not the desperation goes away. They start feeling good, putting a little bit of weight back, getting some color in their face, families talking to them, and then it's like, okay, see you later, guys. I got everything I needed from you. I don't need to be around here anymore. Thank you. But here I go. I'm gonna go. I got some catching up to do.
Yeah.
Deuces, right? Yeah. And I think that's a big reason. But I also think community is huge. Lack of community for people, connection. Like me and you are having a conversation right now, and we can relate to each other, and it makes me feel like I'm more normal just by talking to you.
Yeah, same.
Right? Yeah. Like if you're left to your own devices and you're surrounding yourself with people that don't understand the struggle of what you're going through, what you've been through, you're going to feel alone again. So what, you have some sobriety under your belt? And sometimes I always tell people, like, if you don't have a good program, or you don't have connections with people, or, you're not talking to somebody, you're not doing what you need to do, like being sober is not enough either, because you start feeling miserable again, right? And it's like, yeah, of course, people are going to go back to, the thing that they're comfortable in, that coping mechanism, because they know it's familiar, it's there, right? So I think those factors play a huge part too.
No, that's a good answer. And yeah, you mentioned community. Today I was having one of those days where I was in my head and I was alone. And I'm grateful to be an addict too. I want to say that too, because I truly am. Like, I would never have discovered these tools that I have today to tackle life and anything that life throws at me if I didn't, hit some sort of rock bottom, you know. So I'm grateful too, because yeah, there's you know, you mentioned mediocrity, but I like that idea of, I have a purpose in my life today, and it's not going to be everything I want, but it's going to be everything I need. And then I'm going to find out, and it says this in the literature, right? I'm going to find out that all along, it's what I wanted anyways, right? All the stuff that I needed is what I wanted. And I didn't really want the car. I didn't want the girl. I didn't want the, you know, whatever.
Is your car going to hug you and tell you it loves you every night?
No, but 2 cars might.
2 cars might, right?
And then 3.
Right? Is money going to fucking kiss you on the cheek and say, I'm proud of you? And you know, like, I hope you have a good night. Like, no, like, people, man, like, you know, and all of the other stuff, it just helps you provide some sense of comfort and ease, but it's not a sustainable solution, right? And I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, we're stubborn people, a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
Let's end with this. I know, at least on this podcast, I get a lot of messages from family members, and I'm sure you deal a lot with family reaching out to you before the addict, right? If you could say something to, you know, a wife struggling with her husband, or husband struggling with his wife going through this, or a mom and the kid that's, you know, just doesn't know what to do anymore, what would you say to that loved one?
I would say, like, don't give up. You know, keep trying to, you know, fight the best way that you can for that loved one, and don't give up hope, because if I can stay sober and you can stay sober, anybody can really stay, you know, anyone can get this, right? And I really truly believe that, you know, you just can't give up hope, and do everything you can, you know, to help, and just be there for them the best way that you can, and doing it in a way that's, like, supportive. But there is a lot of help along the way. I mean, you know, our organization is, you know, big in, you know, saving lives, reuniting families, right? That's what Addiction Rehab Toronto stands for. But, you know, just don't give up. Don't give up hope. You'll be amazed, you know, that miracles do come true. And I always tell people, like, stay in your shoes and don't leave before the miracle happens, and don't give up, right? Stay a little longer, try a little harder, you know. And, you know, I always tell families, like, I'll end with this. You always say, like, don't worry, you know, your son or your husband or your daughter, they're in good hands, you know, because, you know, there's nothing can teach you lived experience. Nothing, right? And just don't give up hope.
Love it. Thanks so much for coming down,
I
brother.
appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I love you, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Please help us grow the channel and like, share, and subscribe for more content. The discussions and stories shared on this podcast are for informational and motivational purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, addiction treatment, or therapy. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please consult a licensed physician, addiction specialist, or mental health professional. You are no longer alone.